Hello and welcome to Joy News Prime. This is live from our studio here in Kokomlemle, Accra. Coming up in this latest data from 2023 annual household income and expenditure has revealed that 14.7% of people aged 15 to 35 were unemployed in the third quarter of 2023. We have details. Also, Speaker of Parliament gives all clear to the MPP national executives to proceed to initiate leadership shake-up as he rules political parties must lead the process of selecting new leaders in the House.
Not be talking about you designating or appointing your leaders without the party leading the process.
Also, Deputy Majority Leader Afenyo Markin proposes meeting between flag bearers of NDC and MPP to reach consensus on anti-gay bill in another attempt to block passage, but is shut down as the House readies itself to pass the controversial bill.
I have proposed in the letter that the two flag bearers for the 2024 elections be engaged by the sponsors and my good self.
Well, the latest data from the 2023 annual household income and expenditure has revealed that 14.7% of people aged between 15 and 35 were unemployed in the third quarter of 2023. The survey also revealed that more than 400,000 people entered the labor force between the first and third quarters of 2023. However, more than 30% of people in that bracket remained unemployed, with over 60% of them gaining employment. Now let's break the figures down for you further. If you look at it, it says between the first quarter of 2021, we had some 13.3% of Ghanaians being, unemployed, between those between 15 and 35. Now, by the second quarter of 2022, it was 13.90, and then it dropped to 13.7 by the third quarter. In the fourth quarter of 2023, it slowed down or reduced to 11.30%. Then it jumped again by the first quarter of 2023 to 14.90. Second quarter of last year, 2023, it slowed to 14.60, and then there was a marginal increase to 14.7% by the third quarter of 2023. So if you look at the average unemployment rate from looking at the first to the third quarter of 2022 versus 2023, from the first to the third quarter of 2023, we had around 13.63%. Now, by 2023, first to third quarters, it jumped marginally to 14.73%. So the increment in terms of unemployment rate was around 1.10%. Now let's look at the unemployment rate by sex. Still looking at the first to third quarters of 2023. If you look at it, we had, the male population was 10.20% in the first quarter of 2022. The female population was 15.90% in the first quarter of 2022. In the second quarter, the unemployed males jumped to 12.40%, and that of the female population slowed or reduced marginally to 15.20%. By the third quarter of 2022, the unemployed male population again slowed or reduced to 10.10%. And then for the female, it shot up to 16.60%. And then by the fourth quarter of 2022, the male population who were unemployed still maintained at 10.10%. But that of the female population dropped again to 12.30%. By the first quarter of 2023, however, the population of women who were unemployed shot up again to 18.20%, whilst that of the men, also had a marginal increase to 10.80%. By the second quarter, that of the male population who were unemployed increased again marginally to 10.90%, while that of the female dropped to 17.50%. By the third quarter of 2023, the male population maintained the rate at 10.90%, whilst the unemployed females, jumped marginally to 17.60%. So that's it there if you're looking at the male and female population. Now, if you're looking at regional breakdown in terms of unemployment rate, the Greater Accra region led with 25.70%. Western region followed with 16.80%. Ashanti region came next with 16.40%. Central region followed with 14.40%, whilst Northeast came fifth with 13.50%. Now, half a region was 11.80%. So that's it there in terms of the regional breakdown. We can now hear the government statistician, Professor Samuel Enim, announcing this.
So in terms of what we've done, as I indicated, this is a quarterly panel survey. It's nationally representative, regionally representative, and also the representative for our urban rural classification. The basis, the sampling frame for the 10,800 that we got was from the 2021 population and housing census. Let's keep in mind, let's leave here with not the population of Ghana, which is in excess of 31 million persons, but the population of only those 15 years and older, which is around 19 million. That is the denominator for the conversation. And also the reference period for this conversation is 7 days preceding the day of the interview. So questions around unemployment, we asked, in the last 7 days, did you work? So that is the reference period for the conversation. We have been successful in maintaining a good response rate across the last 4 quarters, that is from the last quarter of 2022 to the third quarter of 2023. We started replacement in the third quarter of 2023. That is why you see the number of households increasing between the second quarter of 2023 and the third quarter of 2023. So as I indicated, the findings are put into 3 broad categories. I'm going to start with the findings on the labor force characteristics. So the first thing we share with you is, think about the constituents of the labor force status. We distinguish between the constituents of the labor force status and the labor force.
Now, some Ghanaians have already started reacting. First is the Unemployed Teacher Trainees Association, who have been reacting to this development. Let's share with you details of their statement that they issued. Now, it says, we, the Coalition of Unemployed Trained Teachers, CUTT, wish to draw the attention of the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Education, the GES, stakeholders, and general public to our plight. They continue by saying that, having been the pioneers of the 4-year B.Ed program in colleges of education, completed our 1-year mandatory national service, as well as successfully passed our licensure exams, there's no news as to when exactly our postings will be done for us. They say it equally raises the questions of how the successes or failures of the now or the new B.Ed program can be realized when we are unemployed. We therefore call on the Ministry of Finance to grant us financial clearance, and the Ministry of Education as well as the GES to expedite actions by opening the portal for us to be recruited latest by the first week of March, so that the resources the state has invested in training us do not go in vain. Now, some other Ghanaians like yourself have been sharing your thoughts on the latest unemployment statistics. Watch this.
I'm looking forward to start working after NSS. So the government, since it's an election year, the government to look forward, and then he should do his things so that he can employ us and vote for him. Otherwise, we'll do it other way. And so the government should do well for us. Now the job system in Ghana is very some way. You go to school, the cost of living too is very high. It's very high, and it's expensive too. Imagine going to school, going through all this wahala, finish, then you come and sit home. Then your parents be feeding you again. Why? So now we are counting on the government to help us. We don't want to be unemployed like our fellow brothers and sisters. We want him to assist us.
Our Minister for Finance has declared that the government's payroll is full. So that means the private sector needs to also open their borders for us, if possible. We also need to find ourselves something doing. just to reduce the unemployment rate. Maybe find the skills doing. But here lies the case that in our, how do we call it? In our tertiary, we are mostly taught the book aspects. But
now let's engage the Chief Statistician at the Ghana Statistical Service, Dr. Owusu Keja, for more on this. Grateful to you, sir, for joining us. Now, help us understand better the unemployment trend on a quarterly basis.
Hello?
Hello, sir. But I want you to help us appreciate the numbers better by getting the unemployment trend on a quarterly basis. Let's appreciate those numbers better, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening, and I thank you for the opportunity. Yes, so I don't know where I start from, but maybe to better appreciate this, we need to understand what we mean by a person being unemployed.
Okay.
And so for somebody to be classified as unemployed, then we are saying that within the reference period, which is the last 7 days that preceded the interview, this person did not do any economic activity and was available to take up any job if one was made available. And so this is how we define who an unemployed person is. And we are looking at the population age between 15 years and, the population 15 years and older.
Is that how we can see sometimes there's a marginal reduction, sometimes there's a huge increase? What is informing that, the changes in terms of the rate in those quarters?
But the changes is normal in the sense that you find somebody who is engaged in economic activity today, tomorrow he loses it or decides to go to school, for instance. And so in the presentation made by Prof, he tried to categorize the population into three, which has to do with the employed population, those who engage in some economic activity and receive some payment.
Okay.
That is the first group of people. And the second group of people are the unemployed population that I talked about earlier. And the third group of people are those who we say are outside the labor force. And these are people who possibly may be going to school, possibly are doing home duties. For that reason, are not getting anything in terms of remuneration out of there.
Okay.
For some people, they are retirement, and so they will tell you they are not interested in engaging in the economic activity. And so these are the three groups of people. And so you find that somebody may be working today, tomorrow the scenario changes, and so they find himself or herself in any of these three categories.
Now, if you can do this for me in the next 30 seconds, I'll appreciate it. Now, there was the mention of vulnerable employment. What is it and why is it high in the Northeast, Savannah, and OT regions?
It's very difficult to explain why, but again, here we're talking about the proportion of the workforce who are contributory family workers put together with the own account workers. And so by own account workers, we are talking about the one-man business.
Okay.
And so he is doing the work on his own, he is not engaging any other person.
Okay.
And the contributory family workers are these people who are also not on their own and they are supporting family businesses.
Okay.
And so this is the definition we give to the vulnerable employment.
Okay.
And therefore, trying to appreciate in terms of getting an understanding of why it is higher in one region or the other, requires some other questioning.
Okay. I'm grateful to you, sir, for joining us here. Now to Parliament now, where the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, has ruled that the caucuses in Parliament have no right by themselves to change their leadership, and that it is the mother party which has to lead the process. As rumors swell of a potential removal of Osei Mensah Bonsu as majority leader to be replaced by his deputy, Alexander Afenyo-Markin, First Deputy Speaker Joseph Osei-Owusu, and other NPP MPs who disagree with the decision said the party cannot change their leadership. But interpreting the standing orders in this matter, Speaker of Parliament Alban Sumana Bagbin insisted that the view is wrong and the party is rather in charge.
I have heard, I have listened, and I know that the parties are having problems with this new definition of the leaders. That is only where this confusion is coming from. The old order referred to party or parties. But this new one is not referring to a party, but caucuses. The old order defined the majority leader to mean a member of parliament designated by the party or parties holding majority of the seats in the House as their recognized leader in the House. Now, this new order says majority leader means a member of parliament designated by the majority caucus as their leader in the House. Designate means appoint. Now, the same standing orders talks about the majority caucus, and it says majority caucus means the members of the party or parties that have the largest number of seats in the House. I really don't see the difference.
But First Deputy Speaker Joe Osei-Owusu disagrees.
Unfortunately, I thought it was just a matter that was said in jest, but you appear to have taken a position and offering a beautiful interpretation of yours. Very welcome, very beautiful. The Speaker, it would appear to me that in interpreting the parliamentary portion, we haven't taken a look at the various wings of the other parties. If you take my party, the NPP, for example, we have what we call the women's wing, the youth wing. When it comes to selecting leaders of the youth wing, the party says, the youth, you go and decide. And they select their leaders. When it comes to the women's wing, they say, women, you go and decide. And they select their leaders. So I am not aware of any parliament where anybody outside parliament selects leaders for the parliament. I think in interpreting the standing orders and the constitution, this group, the parliamentary group, must be recognized as a wing of the party which can and must take decisions regarding its leadership. It doesn't mean that the party has no role. The wing, the parliamentary wing, is a wing of the party. And in deciding who will lead them, I think it should be left to the party, the parliamentary wing of the party.
Now, Ghana's parliament is set to pass the controversial anti-LGBTQI plus bill after nearly 3 years of the bill being laid in the House. This was after Deputy Majority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin withdrew all the amendments proposed. The bill was sponsored by 8 private MPs led by Ningo Prampram MP Samuel Nate George. The bill was expected to be passed last week, but that was blocked by the Deputy Majority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin, who proposed several new amendments which have all now been withdrawn. Let's speak to Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante, who joins us via Zoom now with details. Kweku, when the House started considering the second consideration of the bill, Afenyo-Markin, who had proposed several amendments, was nowhere to be found. The minority and the Speaker interpreted this as an effort to frustrate the passage. Is that it?
Yes, he had moved 14 amendments. He has proposed them, I should say. And when it was time to move them, he was nowhere to be found. It was his deputy, one of the deputy whips, Habib Idris, who was in the chair at the time, trying to filibuster, trying to delay time a little bit to get Alexander Afenyomakin to come in. It was a back and forth for almost an hour. But before that, the Speaker of Parliament had made it clear that the delay in terms of moving this bill forward is not something that he agrees with. It's not something he wants to countenance. This must go on. The minority and the Speaker rightfully said that Alexander Afenyomakin was just trying to frustrate the passage of the bill. Let's listen to Muntaka Mubarak, Emmanuel Kwesi-Bedzira, and the Speaker himself.
Truly, he was interested in moving this amendment. It was advertised that it would be taken yesterday and today. And we all agreed that yesterday that this was going to be done today. Because yesterday, we were making effort to get it done. So if it's absent, and we use that as an excuse, that because it's not around, we should leave it, then, Mr. Speaker, we are rather facilitating the frustration that are being made to frustrate the passage of this bill.
And there is an attempt by some group of people to forestall or prevent the bill being passed. And we see it as a sabotage and we see it as an intention attitude. Mr. Speaker, this morning we agreed that we were going to meet with one of the sponsors of the amendment, Honorable Deputy Majority Leader.
If the person is not there to move the motion, that is it. It's lost, and we move on.
Well, the Deputy Majority Leader then came in, but with a new proposal. What was that?
Oh, the Deputy Majority Leader, Alexander Afenyomakin's proposal is now that he's not against the bill, he still insists, but that the political parties, their leads, the flag bearers, between John Mahama and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the two persons must meet on this bill to fleshing out an agreement before Parliament will move ahead to pass it.
Permit me to brief you on an intervening action by me. Yesterday, I did indicate on the floor that I intend to engage the sponsors for us to get deeper into some consensus on the amendments I proposed, largely on non-custodial sentence for aspects of the bill. Suffice to state that, in principle, I am with them on the objects of the bill, and materially, major part of the bill, we are adding them on sale. Mr. Speaker, I have accordingly followed up, engaged the minority leader, because yesterday the minority front bench indicated that any such engagement with the sponsors must first start with the leave of the leadership, which I felt it was right. I did indicate to him that I would write formally to him to inform him of the steps I intend taking. I also spoke to the minority chief whip and few of the sponsors. Mr. Speaker, I have since delivered the letter to the minority leader's office, and I brought in a copy, which copy is with him now. I have also delivered to your good office the original of communication to you, indicating the steps I believe if we take as a house, we will be able to deal with these minor parts of the bill. Again, Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General is also in receipt of my letter. And basically, I have indicated that it will be proper for him to sit with us, especially as the non-custodial sentencing regime being introduced by them is founded in my amendment. It's better we have a fuller perspective. Mr. Speaker, I need to emphasize respectfully that no attempt whatsoever is being made by me to stall this all-important bill. By way of emphasis, I have proposed in the letter that the two flag bearers for the 2024 elections be engaged by the sponsors and my good self.
Kweku, how did the Speaker rule on this application by the Deputy Majority Leader?
Well, Mr. Bagbian, who we know was clearly frustrated by the delay in passing this bill, will not countenance on anything at all. He wants Parliament to move ahead and do what it has to do. He says Parliament is properly seized with the matter, and Alexander Afenyo-Markin is out of order. He's seeking to abuse the rules of the House.
You are taking advantage of my grace by abusing the practice and procedure of this House. There must always be a rule to go by. We are not at the referral of the bill to a committee for consideration. We passed that. We've done the second reading, gone through all the principles and policies. We've done the consideration stage. Now, you called on the House to do second consideration stage on some clauses of the bill. We now cannot go back to stakeholder engagements and all those things. There is no such rule in our practice. So you are completely out of order. Please, actions speak louder than words.
Kweku, did the Deputy Majority Leader move his amendment?
Yes, he did move one of them. It was opposed by Haruna Idrisu. And then eventually, with the goading of the Speaker urging him to actually withdraw these amendments. He did indeed withdraw all his amendments, paving the way for the bill to be passed eventually tomorrow or by the end of this week.
That application having been refused, although, Mr. Speaker, we are the masters of our own rules, and under the rule of winnowing, we, at consideration, we may apply. I take it that the application has been refused. And I had proposed this on the grounds that it was a new thing that was coming, and I felt that we could winnow and have further discussion. And the records of this House would bear me out that I had actually indicated that colleagues have also said they would be happy we look at it together. And that was the step I was taking, and it was so in good faith. Mr. Speaker, I want the record to reflect. I was doing so in good faith. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I respect your ruling, and I proceed to move the clause 6. Mr. Speaker, the subclause 2, line 5, you delete the existing provisions and insert community service of not less than 3 months and not more than 5 months. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
That he is a trained lawyer, that in law, there is a significant difference between a felony and a misdemeanor. And the words of the sponsors of clause 6 is the use of the word misdemeanor, which he wants to substitute. Misdemeanor ordinarily will mean not a serious crime by any definition.
This is still the Joe News Prime. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more stories to stay. Welcome back from the break. Now, former Minister of Finance, Seth Terkper, says Ghana's current debt crisis will undermine the latest proposals by President Akufo-Addo, asking for the withdrawal of at least 30% of all public funds and other assets kept in foreign banks and financial institutions. Now, according to the president, his country and other African states are fond of placing their sovereign reserves in foreign financial institutions, a situation he believes is derailing much needed development financing for Africa. Blessed Soga has more in the following report.
It is the largest gathering of African heads of states and government. But beyond the assembly, the African Union Summit provides an opportunity to discuss critical issues confronting the continent. On the sidelines of the event in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, African leaders discussed reforms that ought to take place in the global financial architecture in order to give boost to Africa's prosperity. As the champion of African Union's financial institutions, President Akufo-Addo made a passionate demand that at least 30% of sovereign foreign reserves be allocated to the likes of the African Development Bank, amongst others.
We should take a decision that a minimum of 30% of the reserves of each one of us, sovereign reserves, should in fact be invested in the African multilateral institutions. I speak about the ADB, I speak of Afro-Exim Bank, which would strengthen their balance sheets and strengthen their capacity also to facilitate more and more resources for our development. So these institutions are institutions which are ours and which we can trust.
As a key champion of African Union's financial institutions, President Akufo-Addo is leading a presidential dialogue seeking to call for some change and a global reform in the global financial architecture. Experts argue that Africa has been on the receiving end of paying higher prices and a cost for its development financing. It's the reason for which this presidential dialogue is seen as timely and an intervention that can bring about change. As the debate rages on, many African countries are beginning to gain support from other multilateral institutions, and that includes the Commonwealth. Having as many as 19 Commonwealth member states in Africa, Secretary General of the Framework, Patricia Scotland, tells Joy News that a reform in the global financial architecture will be required in unlocking Africa's economic potentials.
And we are looking at how you restructure debt. We have Meridian, which is the debt management system in the Commonwealth, which deals with both public debt and private debt. And from looking at that data, we can see the trends and how we can help to turn it around.
Just this morning, our President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was leading a dialogue, a presidential dialogue targeted at seeking for change in the international financial architecture. Do you agree with this posture of these African leaders?
We've been driving this for a long time, and therefore I was absolutely delighted to see, I feel like saying, my Ghanaian president really at the forefront, because if you look back to 2018, the Commonwealth was saying that the financial architecture was simply not fit for purpose. If you look at what is happening in so many of our countries when it comes to climate change, and so the structure, the financial structure, which does not take into account that vulnerability, simply doesn't work. And as the President was saying this morning, it cannot be fair.
Data analyst here with Joy News, Isaac Kofi joins with a breakdown on Ghana's international reserves. Kofi, first, let's understand how important this international reserves is in terms of stabilizing the economy.
Right, Kojo, if you can hear me, this is what countries usually use to stabilize their currency. So the magnitude of your external reserves actually has a direct impact on how robust your economy will be, even in the domestic scene. So you hear President Akufo-Addo requesting for a withdrawal of 30% of what we traditionally hold in some of these multilateral organizations like the IMF and the World Bank, for us to be able to invest in multilateral banks in Africa like the AFDB. But you have to ask yourself a very simple question. Is the AFDB in that position to give you the magnitude of support you need when you are in that critical situation for Forex? So for instance, this year, Ghana wants $3 billion in support for us to be able to finance our balance of payments. We had to fall on the International Monetary Fund. They gave us a quota of what we have with them. So that $3 billion that we've been able to get from the IMF, the computation was actually done based on Ghana's contributions and the quota that we have. So for us to get that $3 billion, that tells you the magnitude of the forex that some of these multilateral banks like the IMF and the World Bank, they all have to support developing countries like Ghana when they're in that situation. Okay. In 2024, this year, we need about $3 billion again to shore up our balance of payment. Come to think of it, World Bank is giving us some 400 million projected, IMF projected to give us some 750 million. And the AFDB that we are talking about in this situation is only giving us $44 million. So right from the word go, you see where the magnitude of support is coming from. But you ask yourself, will you be able to take 30% of your reserves from institutions like the World Bank and the IMF? Okay. When some critical institutions like the Eurobond, where you go and borrow close to $3 billion, all find solace in the fact that you belong to organizations like the IMF and the World Bank.
All right, so that's Kofi there. Meanwhile, there are concerns that given the sovereign debt crisis confronting many African nations, a withdrawal of 30% of sovereign reserves and its subsequent investment in African banks will make very little difference. Former Finance Minister Seth Terkper is of the view our economic condition will undermine the president's proposal.
If we are going to borrow from the African Development Bank, Afri-Exim, to support trade or to support infrastructure, as we have with Fufu Solar and other projects of the African Development Bank, they are going to be loans. And the only reason African Development Bank is not at the table in the debt discussions that we are having is because it is grouped among the multilaterals with African Development, with the World Bank and the IMF itself as a regional bank. Or else, the loans that we received from them in the past would have been a matter of negotiation. And that is why, the official, that's why the multilaterals are not at the table. Now, secondly, the strength of the African Development Bank to give us loans depends on their ratings. I mean, what most of us do not know is that much of the money that the African Development Bank gives to its member states is actually borrowed. And the African Development Bank is rated AAA, one of the highest. Afri-Exim is rated BAAA. So they are in the same Western financial markets.
Well, let's get more on this by speaking to someone who really understands how these financial systems work. Professor Godfrey Bokpeng is a professor of finance at the University of Ghana. Prof, thank you for joining us. Now, do you think that Ghana could proceed with a withdrawal of, this 30% given our current debt crisis?
Listeners and viewers, I think I lean towards the proposal. The reason is that we have to start from somewhere. It is not as though the 30% withdrawal is a game changer, but I'm looking at it from a more broader African perspective. If you look at the rates at which African countries borrow from the West, traditional markets, it's quite high. They are able to lend so much to us, including the World Bank and the IMF and the rest of them, is because they have so much. And part of what they have is actually from us. So it's not only from our international reserves. I think the whole conversation is about how do we build confidence in our own system that beyond retention of our own international reserves, there is confidence for the private wealth of African individuals that are able to retain, reinvest, plow back their wealth on the continent so that we are able to leverage on that. That will give us cheap capital. But if we continue like this, that, hey, there is no hope, and we throw our hands in the air, there is no bank outside this continent that can help to finance the developmental needs of Africa unless Africa invests in Africa. And a good way to do so is to leverage on some of these regional development banks that are highly rated and therefore have the balance sheet to complement whatever resources we put at their disposal with external capital. That is the only way. Look, if you look at the financing gap in closing the infrastructure gap in Africa alone, on an annual basis, it's more than $100 billion. As we speak right now, the global fund managers, they sit on funds in excess of $100 trillion. Their focus is not Africa. It's Africa that must invest in Africa and retain that wealth here. So beyond what the president is saying, I support the president's proposal, but it goes beyond just this. How do we put in place the necessary financial sector reforms, financial market reforms within Africa? That gives Africans confidence to invest in African financial markets. That also allow us to retain our international reserves. Look at Ghana's sovereign wealth. Do you know how much Ghana is earning on the sovereign wealth we have invested outside the country?
Prof.
So low, and we go for expensive euro bonds. So we give them the money, and then they lend it back to us at expensive rates.
Prof.
And they keep the spread.
Grateful to you for that thought here. Now it's time for fact check, and now today we're focusing on some of the claims made by Deputy General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, Haruna Mohammed, and that of the National Democratic Congress, Mustafa Gbande, at the launch of election headquarters. Now, Raymond Akwa, our research lead, has more on the claims and the verdict.
Let's start with a claim made by the governing MPP's Deputy General Secretary, Haruna Mohammed. It is true that the MPP government did not set out to start farms. The policy document on the planting for food and jobs launched in 2017 states that the goal of the program was to modernize the agricultural sector to improve food security, reduce poverty, and also create employment opportunities. The 5 key pillars designed for policy action were provisioning of subsidized certified seeds, subsidized fertilizers, e-agriculture, market opportunities, and free extension services. It's also true that there has been some improvement in the agri sector growth since it was introduced. Growth in the sector averaged 1.9% from 2014 to 2016. This increased to an average of 5.2% from 2017 to 2019, and further increased to an average of 6.6% from 2020 to 2022.
The MPP did not say that the MPP is coming to construct or develop farms. The MPP said they're going to support farmers.
So that's the clarity.
It's going to support farmers. And it is evident enough in terms of the growth in agriculture.
Let's now concentrate on the claim made by the NDC's Deputy General Secretary, Mustafa Gbande.
They are pointing us to B5. MPP cannot say that B5 is not under their policy of one district, one factory. But you and I know that B5 was established in 2022. So when did it become part of one district, one factory?
They claim that the company B5 Plus Limited was established in 2022 is false. B5 was rather founded in the year 2002. Interestingly, in 2021, when President Akufo-Addo commissioned the first phase of its iron and steel factory in the Nigo-Prapram district, he said that the factory was built with 1D, 1F support, a position corroborated by the CEO of B5 Plus, Mukesh Takwani, who also stated that it was built in line with the 1D, 1F initiative.
All right, so welcome back. Let's do showbiz now, and Becky Bex is here. Hi, Becky, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing? Let's talk about Diana Hamilton. Ahead of her Awake Experience, the Kumasi edition, she paid a courtesy call on the Asante Hene, and he's been lauding the musician for her impact on society with her music. Asante-Hene Otumfuo Osei-Tite has commended gospel musician Diana Hamilton for her musical prowess and efforts in promoting the Ghanaian gospel industry. When the gospel singer paid a courtesy call at the Menchia Palace in Kumasi, the Otumfuo admonished her to remain steadfast and submissive in the music industry.
So, Rasini, Yame, Tradian Pond, dance. Nachede, no dear man. So, Rasin said, Yamia Chede, no dear man. Said, be a soft, so no, the sacred Nikaman. So, two for say, be no ya soft, you know, so a room, the sacred Nipa, Emani. No more, it will be too for money. So, Rasin, room, it will be too for Emani. You my reward cry Daniel. Sure, you are saying you my reward cry Daniel. No be na media channel until Ogidinsa. Sure, you are saying no be and then media chawa Amwagidinsa. So pioneer so everybody at church. Sure, you are so no dear. Your word be Jawa and Empire bo no bo and your church. No one to us were and Sure.
The Asante-Hene also invited Diana Hamilton to perform at his 25th anniversary celebration, musical concert, and his birthday party. Diana Entry Hamilton and Enterprise Life supported the Asante-Hene's drive in renovating the Akufo-Addo Teaching Hospital with 20,000 Ghana cedis. Diana Hamilton spoke to Joy News after the visit.
Day for three different things. The Awake Experience with Diana Hamilton is 10 years. Last Sunday, we were in Accra celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Awake Experience. And we're coming to Kumasi on Sunday the 25th, which is this Sunday. And so we came to Otumfuo's Palace, want to meet the king and to ask permission, want to go ahead with the celebration, 2, to ask for his permission, and 3, I'm one of the ambassadors for the fundraising he is having to renovate the Akufo-Addo Teaching Hospital. And so I did speak to my sponsors and the companies I stand for, i.e. Property Electronics, Our Purified Drinking Water, and Enterprise Life. And they've all helped in one way or another to support this project.
This evening, let's spotlight. It's Wednesday, so we're putting a spotlight on a young musician who is coming from where Kofi Kinata is coming from.
Oh, Western region.
But not Ifie Kuma. But he's from the Western region. Yeah. He's called Nemesis Loso. And he's been telling us all about how he loves music and his plans for the Ghanaian music industry. Loso right there. Yeah. If you are a music lover, please follow him and share his music, and we'll go to heaven, everybody. But let's talk about Beyonce, because Beyonce, she is doing big things in the country music chart. Let's take this report. Hold them. Have you listened to the song?
No, yet too.
I might bring it to you probably tomorrow.
Yeah, let's see how it goes.
That's what's going on. You were telling me about...
Well, I was telling you that today, Wednesday, February 21, 2024, is what they call the International Mother Language Day.
International Mother Language Day.
Exactly. So I mean your mother tongue. Okay. So my mother tongue is Ahanta.
Okay. So
I speak Ahanta. So for example, tonight I say Mbabadri. Mdemi care bon DNA. Nyamze adomla ye akashi ye kra news ya. Mzam ogalame benyashile. Momzo suwa bolmo agunada. Mdemi de bela kozro. So to it. Good evening.
Oh, no, don't explain.
Okay. So you two give us yours.
It was mine is 2. So I grew up speaking Efe and Tree.
Okay.
So me da pandemia katambe mi po Joy News fianke mi ena yeda mwasese Mashe Joy News in Meway, ye Bompire say de bia mo betwaso ashe Joy News. Yakata me no Joy News for me de kupunami. Joy News say akoye election headquarters.
All right.
News katantima news ukatanle myjoyonline.com.
Okay. All right then. So thank you very much for being with us. My fellow Nzima people will say yedaya no kuya okay eba year ehima. My fellow